everyone, Cam here from Yes Auto, and today we're going to be driving this thing, the Volkswagen Touareg R. That's right, Volkswagen has given its biggest SUV the R treatment. That means it is the most powerful car the company currently sells, and at £72,000 it's also the most expensive. And if you think about it, it's now currently in competition with the Audi SQ7 and Porsche Cayenne e-hybrid. This is also a hybrid as well, and I want to know if it's any good. So we're going to go and poke around with it and take it out on the road. But before I get into this review, and this thing, the Touareg R, and it all starts here with the grille. Now on a regular Touareg you've got a hell of a lot of chrome going on around here, both vertically and horizontally, but on the R it's all blacked out and it looks a lot meaner. There's also a little R badge there to tell the world that you're in the angrier version of the Touareg. LED headlights come as standard, and this front end is actually pretty much the same as the Golf R and also the Tiguan R, which we drove very recently. Moving further around, we've got 22-inch alloy wheels. Now, you can actually get them in this diamond cut black and silver, or you can get them just in black overall for the ultimate murdered out spec. Beefier brakes. We've also got an Audi developed all-wheel drive system that can send either 70% of the power to the front wheels or 80% to the rear to get maximum grip. There's also air suspension as standard, and you can actually adjust it so you can really jack the suspension up or slam it to the ground. I always think it looks funny when you make it as high as possible. At the back, little bit of a wing to show that this is a slightly sportier car, but the actual back of the car itself looks pretty much identical to the standard Touareg. And what disappoints me a little bit is they've not gone for the quad exhaust system, so you've just got these two relatively boring looking exhausts at the back. And the R is all about that massive rocket launcher quad exhaust at the back. Still, at least you've got a little R badge so that people who are behind you know that this is the fast one. So if you've just been shopping and your hands are full and you can't get to the boot, you can always just do this. I have been trying so many times to get that to work. And in a normal Touareg, you would have 810 litres of storage back here, but on the Touareg R you get 70 litres less, and that's because it's a PHEV, and all the hybrid gubbins are stored at the back of the car, which cuts into boot space. And what also cuts into boot space is the bag, or the charging bag. Now, you don't have to carry this with you if you're not going to charge on the go, but it's got to go somewhere, right? So that takes up a bit more space, but what's cool is it comes with these little clamps that you can clip onto the boot floor so that it stays in place when you're throwing it around. So it's still a pretty damn big boot, and if you want to open up even more, you can actually just pull these levers at the sides and the rear seats will fold down automatically. And of course the Touareg is a really big car, so getting stuff in and out can be a bit of a challenge, particularly if you've got an old dog that really struggles to get into boots. Well, the great thing is that because we've got air suspension, we can actually lower it. So if I press and hold a button down here, I don't know if you can see, but the car is lowering itself. Just look at all the stuff we have here. Now, you're probably expecting me to say this has got a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine producing 316 brake horsepower, because that's the deal with pretty much everything wearing an R badge. Well, it's different in the Touareg. We have a 3-litre turbocharged V6 engine that's connected up to an electric motor, and together they produce 456 brake horsepower, which is sent to all 4 wheels, making this the most powerful VW product on sale. Now, you get it with an 8-speed automatic gearbox, and crucially, because this is a PHEV, we've got a battery in here, so you can drive on electric energy alone for up to 28 miles. So it won't come as a huge surprise that the inside of the Touareg R is pretty much identical to that of the regular Touareg. There are some subtle differences that separate it from other cars. For instance, we've got a blue light that runs along the width of the dashboard. We've got an R wheel, so it's shaped a little bit more sporty. We've got these kind of grooves on the side, which our hands can fit into really nicely. Little R badge down there. We've also got R leather seat with an R badge at the top. And what's quite interesting is on most R products, you get cloth seats as standard and leather as an optional extra, and it usually costs about £2,500. On here, it comes included in the price, and it should at £72,000. We've also got some blue stitching on the top here, but that's about it, really. It does feel very similar to the regular Touareg, for better or for worse. Now, the two things that dominate the dashboard are the 12-inch virtual cockpit and the gigantic 15-inch infotainment screen. Now, I'm quite used to seeing big infotainment screens on fully electric cars with very minimalist cabins, but something this big in what is a regular SUV is pretty crazy, seeing it this big, although it is available on the rest of the Touareg range. I'm not a massive fan of VW's latest infotainment software because I feel like it's too touch sensitive. There's too much of the car's controls rely on the center screen, but it's actually different in the Touareg because it's a bit more fleshed out. You can access some of the buttons a lot easier when you're on the go. So while it can be quite fiddly in something like a Golf when you're driving along and you've got, relatively speaking, quite a small screen to go through all the sub-menus, because you have so much real estate here, accessing the climate settings is much easier. So I do prefer it to what you get on other VW products. And it's ultra sharp, really high resolution, very slick. And it's also really responsive, much more responsive on the systems that you get on the Volkswagen Golf R. And you can watch my review of that, by the way, by clicking the link in the top right-hand corner. It's much, much slicker. We've also got a nice big home button in the center of the dash as well. So if I want to flick between the two main home screens, then I can do so very easily. Of course, if you want to, you can plug in and use Apple CarPlay, and it works absolutely brilliantly on here. So complementing the 15-inch infotainment screen is this beautiful 12-inch virtual cockpit. And I think the graphics are a little bit different to the version that you get on the Golf R as well as the Tiguan R, because it just looks a little bit more sophisticated, less sporty, more luxurious. Not sure if that works in what is meant to be a sports car, but I think they look great either way. Now, what's a little bit different on here is because we have the plug-in hybrid, there's also a readout on the left-hand side for the amount of electric power you're using. So at the moment, we have the car, the actual engine ticking over at about 1000 RPM, but when the electric motor kicks in, that gauge goes to 0 and the electric motor then takes over. Now, you can also recharge the battery under braking, and when you do that, the green bar at the bottom will light up and show you how much percentage of battery you're charging. It won't be that much, though, in all fairness. Now, that can all be accessed using the buttons on the steering wheel. So on the Touareg, we have the haptic feedback buttons. Now, it's the same on the new Golf. It's also the same on the Tiguan R. But what I find a little bit strange is on the Golf and on the Tiguan, you have a dedicated R button there to go into the sport mode, and you don't on the Touareg. So what's also cool, we've got a small menu down here to go through the different driver modes. Now, being an R, we have a few different driver profiles that we can go to. So as standard, you've got it in comfort. Then you can go to normal, and then obviously there's sport mode for the most performance-focused version of the car. And as you've just heard, the car has fired up. So whereas it would normally start on electric power and then switch over to combustion when you really put your foot down, if you're in sport, the combustion takes over and you have the full whack of the hybrid and the regular motor. We've also got some off-road settings on here as well. And as I was saying earlier about the Audi-developed all-wheel drive system, it can distribute the torque between the front and rear axle for optimum grip. So although this looks like it's designed for the racetrack, or as much as an SUV can, it can actually go off-road. Now on my left we've got access to the air suspension system, so if I turn it all the way to the right it can jack the suspension right up, and then if I go to the left we can slam it back down again. We have a glove compartment, but the actual owner's manual doesn't fit in it, so it just flops closed, so you have to keep it in a little bit of netting down at the side here, which is a bit of a compromise. The Touareg is a big car, so it comes as little surprise that I've got a lot of room back here. So I'm just under 6 foot, and leg room absolutely fine. The driver's seat is in my position and I've still got plenty to go, and headroom isn't too bad. I think it really depends on where you read it from, because if you take it from the roof line here, it's a little bit tight. I think if you're a 6 foot you should be all right, but if you take it from the panoramic roof, there's lots of space to go. So if you're really tall, you might just have to lean over a little bit. Now these seats, they're all right. They're not the plushest seats on the planet, which is a bit of a shame, again, for a car costing £72,000. But they can recline. So if I wanted to put this back, I can do that and be in my relaxing premium SUV. We've also got climate controls back here, so I can have all the heat I want, and the person on the left can have all the coldness that they want, and the person in the middle, well, just has to do with a mix between the two. There's also a little fold-out thing down here as well, with 2 USB-C chargers and a 12-volt charger as well. So if you're in the back, it's not the flashiest thing, but you're pretty well covered. Share of VW R products. I've done the Golf R recently, the T-Roc R, and also the Tiguan R. And for better or for worse, they all feel pretty much the same. Yes, something like a Tiguan R leans over a bit more in the corners compared to a Golf R, just because it's a bigger car. But in general, you get the same experience. This Touareg R, though, is a little bit different. So I'm going to start off by putting it into comfort mode. And this is where we get the peak Touareg experience. So at the moment we're running on electric power alone, so it is completely silent in here. And the suspension is also in its softest, most pillowy setting. We have air suspension as standard on the Touareg R, which isn't very performance focused, but from a casual cruiser perspective, it's oh so smooth. But you don't buy a Touareg R to drive around in comfort all the time. I'm sure most of you will just whack it into sport mode straight away to see what this baby is like. And the first thing I'm going to do is see how quickly it'll get up to speed. Foot flat to the floor. That's pretty damn fast. But it feels very different to other R products, possibly due to its weight. So we do have the most powerful VW product on our hands, but we also have one of the heaviest. It means that the Touareg R feels a little bit more leisurely when it's getting up to speed. It does it very quickly indeed. I just went from 0 to 70 there very, very quickly. But you won't be pinned to the back of your seat like you would be in a Golf R or even on a Tiguan R. The engine is also pretty quiet. That's me, foot flat to the floor. I'm not sure if my microphone will pick it up, but it is very quiet indeed. There doesn't appear to be any form of synthesized engine note in the Touareg. Now we've got some neat tech in here. First of all, this is a PHEV, so we can travel for up to 28 miles on battery power alone. Now the car can also be driven semi-autonomously. Now it does that by combining adaptive cruise control with lane keep assist. So if I'm cruising along here at, let's say, 70, what I can do is just keep my hands on the wheel and the car will stay in its lane. And if the car in front of me slows down, I'll slow down. And if they move out of the way themselves, I'll then speed back up again. So I'm just going to get to the point. Is the Touareg R a driver's car? Not really. I am a big driving fan myself, and while I find some of the R products to be a little bit like blunt instruments, they're very good in a straight line but not great in the corners. I think this Touareg is just a bit too soft and a bit too rounded around the edges to be a hardcore product that a proper R is. So what is it then? Well, it's immensely comfortable, it's very capable, it's crammed full of technology, but it has some styling that looks like an R product, and the interior is like what you'd get on an R model. So this might not go down all that well with VW fans, but it feels more like an R line than a proper R. So 3 things I like about the Touareg R. It is pretty punchy in a different way compared to a proper R model, but it is quick. The second thing is it's incredibly comfortable. This is a really relaxing car to be in, and it just feels so soothing. And the third thing is this big 15-inch infotainment display. I thought it wasn't going to work at all, but it actually is not that bad. 3 dislikes. I think the first thing is pretty obvious. It's not the performance car that I was expecting it to be, and I think a lot of R buyers are going to be expecting it to be as well. It feels much softer than that. The second thing is I wish it was a bit noisier. I wish we had a bit more engine noise in here. There's no options to really open up the valves in the back of the car, so even when you're on it, it's still pretty quiet. And the third thing is it's £72,000, and I would rather go and buy a Porsche Cayenne or an Audi Q7. I think they're better cars, and your Audi Q7 is more practical, Porsche Cayenne is more fun to drive. But you know, £72,000 is just the starting point. If you head over to... But of course, £72,000 is the list price. If you head over to yesauto.com, you can check out our deals on new and used Touareg Rs. You might be able to save yourself a few £1,000 and make it seem a little bit more of a viable option compared to some of the other